Well, the Bonga volcano is still producing lava almost 5 months after an eruption, and high volumes of sulfuric dioxide are still being emitted, leading to evacuations of local villages.
Something strange is happening in Iceland right now. Not loud at first, not explosive. Just a quiet decision that made scientists, engineers, and governments around the world pause and ask the same question. Why would a country deliberately pour massive amounts of salt water onto flowing lava? Because when molten rock starts moving toward homes, roads, and entire towns, the usual rules change. In the last few months, thousands of people in Iceland have been forced to leave their homes as volcanic fissures opened beneath the ground. Lava didn't erupt like a single dramatic blast. It crept forward slowly but relentlessly, reshaping the land minute by minute. And instead of standing back and letting nature take its course, Iceland responded in a way that feels almost unbelievable. They fought lava with seawater. That choice wasn't made out of panic. It was made out of experience, science, and a deep understanding of the land they live on. And to understand why this matters, we need to step back and look at what's really happening beneath the surface. Because this story isn't just about a volcano. It's about how humans adapt when the ground itself refuses to stay still. Iceland is not just another country with the occasional eruption. It sits directly on a tectonic boundary where two massive plates are slowly pulling apart. That movement doesn't happen smoothly. Pressure builds, magma rises, and when it finally finds a weak point, the Earth opens. For centuries, this region stayed quiet. Generations lived their lives without seeing fire come out of the ground. But geological time doesn't move on a human schedule. What looks like stability to us can simply be a long pause. Over the last few years, that pause ended. The Reykjanes Peninsula has entered a new volcanic phase, one that scientists believe could last decades. This isn't a single eruption followed by silence, it's a cycle. And cycles like this reshape landscapes, economies, and entire ways of living. When lava first started flowing again, it wasn't dramatic in the way movies portray volcanoes. There was no single explosion signaling the end. Instead, fissures opened like glowing wounds in the earth. Lava spilled out steadily, spreading outward, slow enough to watch but fast enough to destroy anything in its path. And that's where the real tension began, because slow lava is deceptive. People assume it's easy to escape, but slow doesn't mean harmless. It means unavoidable. Roads disappear, power lines melt, infrastructure that took decades to build can vanish in hours. Entire communities were evacuated, families left behind homes not knowing if they would ever return, businesses shut down, towns went silent, and all the while lava kept moving. This is the point where most countries would stop. Evacuate. Wait. Let the eruption burn itself out. Iceland didn't. Instead, engineers and scientists made a decision rooted in history. In the 1970s, during another eruption on a small Icelandic island, seawater was pumped onto lava to cool it. It worked. Not perfectly, not without risk, but enough to save critical infrastructure. That memory mattered. This time, when lava threatened roads and settlements, authorities acted quickly. Pumps were brought in, seawater was redirected, and tons of salt water were poured directly onto the advancing lava flows. To someone watching from afar, it sounds almost absurd. Water versus molten rock at temperatures hotter than steel melts. But physics doesn't care how dramatic something looks. It cares about energy transfer. When cold seawater meets lava, heat is absorbed rapidly. The outer layer of lava cools and hardens. That hardened crust slows the flow beneath it. It doesn't stop the volcano, but it buys time. And in disaster response, time is everything. This wasn't guesswork. It was guided by real-time data. Satellite imagery tracking heat, seismic sensors measuring movement underground, gas readings showing how magma was behaving below the surface. Modern volcanology isn't about predicting the exact moment of eruption. It's about understanding behavior patterns and responding intelligently when those patterns shift. And here's the part that often gets overlooked. This response wasn't just about protecting buildings. It was about protecting stability, psychological stability, economic stability, the idea that life can continue even when the ground itself is changing. Because for the people affected, the eruption didn't happen once. It happened every day they woke up unsure if they could return home. Every time the earth trembled beneath their feet, every time the glow of lava lit the sky at night. And that leads to a deeper question that doesn't get asked enough. Why do some societies adapt to natural threats more effectively than others? Part of the answer lies in relationship. Iceland doesn't see volcanoes as rare disasters. They see them as part of the landscape. Schools teach volcanic science early. Infrastructure is designed with eruptions in mind. Emergency planning isn't theoretical. It's lived experience. This mindset changes everything. Instead of fear, there's respect. Instead of denial, there's preparation. And instead of helplessness, there's action. That doesn't mean there's no risk. Pouring water on lava can create steam explosions. It can release toxic gases. It requires precise control and constant monitoring. Every move carries consequences, but choosing to do nothing also carries consequences. And this is where the story becomes bigger than Iceland. Around the world, natural hazards are becoming harder to ignore. Earthquakes, floods, wildfires, volcanic activity, climate systems shifting in unpredictable ways. The question is no longer whether these events will happen. The question is how societies respond when they do. Do we freeze? Do we retreat? Or do we adapt intelligently, using science not to dominate nature, but to coexist with it? The Icelandic response shows a middle path. Not arrogance, not surrender, cooperation. They didn't try to stop the volcano. They didn't pretend it wasn't happening. They worked with the laws of physics to shape outcomes where possible. And here's something important that often gets lost in the headlines. This eruption isn't over. Scientists believe the region has entered a long-term active phase. That means more eruptions are likely. Not tomorrow, not predictably, but eventually. And each eruption will rewrite the rules again. That reality forces hard conversations. Where should people rebuild? How close is too close? How much risk is acceptable? And who gets to decide? These are not scientific questions alone. They are social, economic, and deeply human. Because behind every evacuation number is a person who lost routine, security, and certainty. And yet, life continues. People adapt. Communities reorganize. New infrastructure is planned with new data in mind, and knowledge grows. That's the quiet power of stories like this. They're not just about destruction. They're about learning. Learning that nature doesn't negotiate emotionally, but it does respond to physics. Learning that preparation is more powerful than panic. Learning that resilience isn't about resisting change, but about moving with it intelligently. As this eruption continues to evolve, scientists around the world are watching closely. Not because Iceland is unique, but because what happens here will inform responses everywhere else. The methods being tested today may shape how future eruptions are handled decades from now. The data being collected will improve models, the successes and failures will become lessons. And those lessons matter, because the ground beneath us is not as stable as we like to believe. So here's where I want to leave you. Stories like this aren't meant to scare us. They're meant to sharpen us, to remind us that knowledge is not abstract. It's practical. It saves time. It saves infrastructure. Not because Iceland is unique, but because what happens here will inform responses everywhere else. The methods being tested today may shape how future eruptions are handled decades from now. The data being collected will improve models, the successes and failures will become lessons. And those lessons matter, because the ground beneath us is not as stable as we like to believe. So here's where I want to leave you. Stories like this aren't meant to scare us. They're meant to sharpen us, to remind us that knowledge is not abstract. It's practical. Sometimes it saves lives. If you found this breakdown useful, take a moment to share it with someone who values understanding how the world actually works beneath the surface. And if you want more stories that connect science, history, and real human choices, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking better questions. Because the Earth is always moving, The only real question is whether we're paying attention.